It is
Okay,
what it is.
it is what it is. Dr. Nestori Syynimaa, how are you?
I'm fine.
Thanks for joining me today. Much, much appreciated. So you are in Sweden?
Finland.
Finland. Oh, okay.
You never should mix those two people because
I really apologize. The strike one on this conversation to begin with. So, um, first and foremost, when somebody looks up your LinkedIn profile, I think I would say the striking thing is immediately to see like how much education have you pursued. Um,
okay.
I would just say right off the bat, talk to me about the pursuit of knowledge in an academic sense, because you were a CIO, but you also, as you progress, you aside from being a PhD, you also acquired a couple of different masters, and you're continuously doing that. So talk to me about the drive and of the pursuit of the academic route.
Yeah, so when I was a young boy, I've been in my 20s or something. I didn't have any education and I got hired to a company which was doing like programming. And I quite fast in 3 years or 4 years, something like that, I became CTO of that company. And I was part of like the group or the board. And I was like, maybe I need to get some education. And then I first got my like a vocational qualification on IT systems, and that took like 3 months, something like that. And then I went to study business administration. So in next 3 years or something, I spent in my free time, I was studying as a bachelor degree in business administration. And then I decided to continue. So I went to master's degree on business administration or economics and business administration in university. And I did that like next 2 years. And then I decided maybe this is okay now. But then after a year, maybe one more. And those my degrees were from Finland. And then I applied to University of Reading, and to be more specific, Henley Business School. And then inside that, there was a thing called Informatics Research Center. And I applied there, and I was selected to the doctoral program. And it took like 5 years or something. It was 2015 when I graduated from there. And that was all about informatics, so it wasn't about cybersecurity as such. But anyways, I done a lot of like certifications, so I have like 40 or 50 of them, like Microsoft and IBM and like ITIL and that kind of like things. And then last year, no, it was 22. Yeah, there was one course, master's course for cybersecurity, Master of Engineering, and I thought that maybe I'll just try to apply. Let's see how it goes. And then I got 96 out of 100 points, and I was selected first to that program. And then, okay, maybe I need to finish this, and I did that last year. And
So,
I'm also pursuing another PhD in cybersecurity in one of the Finnish universities. So it's also like I'm almost done there, but not yet. Maybe next year.
and it's very cool because it also aligns with what you're doing now as being a researcher at Microsoft. Like very much so, you back up some, what your research work with your academic work, so it aligns together. But I would say most people, I would say, first of all, like just from experience, most people would just say, why don't I just stop here? They do undergrad. I don't know what's the percentage points. This some people pursue undergrad and they go a master's, and then only a few of them go to PhD program because I think the challenging piece of it is that you have to contribute something new back to the academia. And so, and it is different from masters because first it's shorter in time span, but also you have to have your own driver. It's almost like you gotta continuously be motivated to finish. And there's a lot of people that are doing, they're lifetime PhD students, meaning that and you're smiling because you know it's true. So what do you think is the driver behind this pursuit? Is that because you have nothing to prove? You're you've done quite a bit. You've done well for yourself. Like, why do you think is that some sort of a hobby that you've created yourself, or is
Yeah,
it?
you could say that it's a hobby. So the science or academia, it has been a kind of a hobby for me. Well, I used to do also like lecturing in university, like part-time, 50% of my time, just to, give something back. Um, but I'm also doing like research, and publishing in like scientific conferences. So I've done that actually about with 10 of my colleagues. So they had some idea and I said, hey, we could write a paper about that. They would, no, let me help you. And then we did it and it got published and so on. So that is kind of my hobby. And now in Finland, you can do PhD in two different ways. So either you write one big book or monography, or then you can do it by publishing like scientific papers. And if you have 5 or something, you can do your PhD about that. And now that I've done that, publishing 1 or 2 papers a year, I've got a bunch of those. So I just need to put them together and write a story about all of those, and that should do it. But yeah, that's also like because I've done that already. So why not to finish? That I have the bits and pieces, and why not just put them together and finish the degree?
And it also seems like it comes almost naturally to you, meaning a lot of people struggle. I mean, it's not easy to to get into some of these programs. As you mentioned, the selection process. Sometimes you have to go through an entrance exam. And what do you think from particular attributes that you have that makes it so easy for you? Because I'm sure some people will view and listen to this and say, wow, listen, I've always wanted to do a PhD. I always wanted, but I find it so difficult. I find it so difficult to get myself going and applying, for a GMAT, doing the GMAT exam and getting into the MBA school and doing all that stuff. Is there a particular thing in your upbringing that made you, so academically endowed, I would say?
Well, first of all, PhD is nothing but like a little big, larger assignment. And it just takes a couple of years usually to finish. Well, it depends on country and what kind of program you are. And also like about the university you are attending. But anyways, it usually takes a couple of years. Usually when you are a PhD student, you are working. So you can't do that full time. If you can, it might be a little bit like faster. But there are some qualities. And first one is that you need to finish what you start. So that's one of the qualities that usually helps in doing that. And also like you don't need to be too hard to yourself, because there are some times that you don't have time to do your studies, but you just need to be persistent. So if I don't do anything this month, I'll do next month, and so on.
Yeah,
So
we all have,
that's
I think life catches on to us. A lot
yeah.
of times people start programs that take a couple courses and then, life basically happens. And I know there's some people they join these programs maybe after maybe lower, like an older age where maybe they've dealt with the family and all that stuff and they have more free time. But it's really interesting. And then from the future of education, and I'd love to talk to you about this because you also have a lot of certifications, and there's this struggle or conversations about, from cybersecurity professionals, whether it's worth it, whether you have to have a degree in that particular business or cybersecurity or IT discipline to be successful in cyber, and whether you have to have all the certification if that's a contributor to you being more effective. And it's almost like, I like how you're like, you either Nikon or Canon for in photography. I think with this is also school of thought. You either in favor of formal education for cyber and saying this is a must, or you say, well, it doesn't matter. And there's the other school of thought. So I'd like to get your thoughts about that.
Yeah. So the formal education is good in certain way that it proves something. Okay, you finish what you started, so you are like people know that they can trust you to finish whatever you are starting. Second one is that it is like teaching you like how to do the science, how to research, that kind of like mindset. Whereas the certifications are measuring like what are your like skills, and not like what are your like ethics and moral and that kind of things, which then are taught in science universities. So I would say that it would be good, ideal to have both, like the undergrad and then a couple of certifications and certification, especially in the area you are interested at. But those are also like a bit difficult because sometimes you need to have like work experience a couple of years before you can get that certificate. So that's also a bit challenging. And there's been a lot of like talk or discussions about that. Are those certifications any good? And my opinion is that it depends. Like a consultant always says the same thing. So let's imagine that you are applying to a cybersecurity job in organizations like Microsoft or SecureWorks or CrowdStrike. Well, those are organizations that already know probably about you and your skills, and then you can explain them or show what you have done, and they are okay, we can hire you. But if you are going to apply a cybersecurity job in an organization, a company that doesn't work in cybersecurity at all, maybe let's say some like factory, for instance, manufacturing whatever, bicycles or something. So how can they assess your knowledge? Because they don't know. They are not subject matter expert on that. So what can they do? They can go and ask somebody who knows that, hey, what would be a nice certification that if the guy has who is applying, we can be pretty much sure that he knows about these things. So yeah, so it's kind of like it depends.
And you also have, with all of that, you also have a designation from Microsoft, right? For being, there's only what, 100 of these that they give out yearly. What's the,
Oh,
like,
you mean this MBR thing?
yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. So it's most valuable researcher, Microsoft most valuable researcher, and how to get that? Well, you need to report vulnerabilities to Microsoft using their portal, and then depending on how severe that vulnerability is or what is the quality of your report, you will get points, also bounties like money, and then at the end of the year, well, it's actually at the end of the fiscal year of Microsoft, so it's around June or something. There will be a list of top 100 researchers, and those will be on that list.
And some people would say, for people that are really interested in reverse engineering, in malware analysis, and research, I mean, that's got to be the dream job to be able to do that, something that may or may not be your hobby, and actually get paid for it and be recognized. It really is like, and I would say when people are saying cybersecurity, it's not the first thing they think, oh, let me become a researcher. It's not trivial. They think, okay, pen tester, working in, being a CISO, whatever the case may be, but they don't think necessarily research. And so, if you don't mind, just describe the kind of what's a day like in your day to day? Like, do you get up in the morning or say, okay, because it's almost like a scientist that is looking for a new species of bees. You're like walking down, you travel to some country, you're trying to figure, and you're smiling because it's true. You're out there trying to figure out if there's anything out in the wild. So I would love to double click on it and just figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, so basically there are two parts in my job, and one is like to be a public speaker or public voice about things, and the second one is doing the research so that I can talk about something. So and in research, during my career or in my experience, there are actually like two things or ways or processes, if you will. And the first one is that I'm just, browsing a portal or doing just something and maybe running like a tool that shows the traffic between the client and cloud. And then I just say, hey, what is that? Interesting. And then I just notice something. And what if I change this parameter to something else? What
But
happens?
is that like a Beautiful Mind? Maybe if you watched the movie where
Yeah,
the
yeah,
guy
yeah.
sees patterns,
Yeah.
it's almost
I'm
sounds to
not
me
I'm
like
not that good, but yeah, pretty much the same like mindset. Yeah.
yeah, same mindset where you're looking for patterns and you're trying to figure things out maybe that are not trivial and may not be detected by others.
Yeah.
And maybe not to
Yeah.
that level. The guy was obviously a genius, but I'm sure you're not. You're not for the faint of heart either. I'm sure you have a lot of some brain power to do this kind of job. So talk to me. So you're like viewing traffic and you're trying to break stuff, really, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I can see that how it works. Like when something is working as it should, that's usually what like programmers want to do. That's they create features so that they work according to their specification.
Yeah, predictability is very important, right? So you have a program where you have the input
Yeah,
and then the output. It has to be super predictable, right? So that's the whole point of software.
yeah. I mean that programmers try to make things to work. Okay, and programmers doesn't usually think that how this feature can be used for wrong purposes. So when I'm putting some input inside what the programmer didn't anticipate, the output could be something totally different. So that's kind of what happens when you watch the traffic and try to change some parameter to some other values and see what happens. Uh, so that's one
But Nestori,
like way.
how do you change that? Assuming that the software receives input from somewhere. So when you say change it, so you're trying to change the input on the input side. But like I'm thinking to myself, any portal like this traffic goes around and there's a million different, like back and forth. How do you in actuality make a change in the input?
Well, there are so like very many ways to do that, but typically let's speak about like for
Yeah, just
instance,
an
if you are
example.
using browser and you are browsing portal, you usually use like a network traffic monitor or like well, actually it's a proxy. I use Fiddler, but it could be like Burp Suite. So whatever is your choice of tool, and then you can see the traffic. And in both things, you can like replay requests. So when you, for instance, let's say you want to find a user, you type in username like Nestori and hit enter. There's an API call in the background. An API call, it has to like the search parameters username equals Nestor or starts with Nestor. And then you can just edit the request and replay that. So you can try different parameters to see what happens. So that's one way. Or other things are that if you have like a client in your computer that somehow doesn't allow you to see the traffic, then you can just debug that online, and then when it's running, you can just change parameters and again see what happens, like at breakpoints and so on. So, but there are many, many, many ways to do that.
And so it sounds like a lot of manual process, right? I know there are fuzzers or tools out there that are trying to automate this process, and I would throw in the mix of this question. It was also it seems like almost something that AI engine would be very good at creating these nuances or changes, subtle changes to the input, and do it on
Yeah,
a automatic level.
yeah, yeah. And usually the fuzzers are good for finding like programming errors in the software or libraries or so on. But what I'm usually looking at is more like business logic errors. So that it behaves somehow differently when I'm asking different things. But yeah, uh, I assume that AI would be very good for that, helping like to find things, especially if you teach AI that how I work, for instance, is copying that and then tries to you know do
And
that. So
to be really good at it, I think that you have to really have the mindset of the developer and understand the inner works of almost like it's almost like you have to know you're trying to hack a car, you have to know how the engine is running. So the same thing for you. You have to understand, you have to have a really deep understanding of the underlying software, and then in your case, your business logic, right? What is a developer when they develop this software or develop this portal? What it is that they're expecting, and how once they receive it, where does it go? And so you have to have almost like, and so is this something you have? Because it's something I'm sure you have in your mind when you're like trying to fiddle with the input. Is it something you have in your mind, almost like a mental note on how the software is supposed to work?
yeah, you need to know that. And sometimes it's like you can see the API call that there's one parameter equals 1, and the second is like 0, and you could guess that okay, maybe if I put 2, something different happens, and then if you see the output and you understand that okay, when it was 0, it was user; when it was 1, it was group; when it's 2, now it's device, and then you could try to figure okay, this number means like different kind of objects, and yeah. So, but yeah, you need to know like some programming basics, but also in this business, it's networking is quite important. So you also need to know like network protocols, how they work, and then like basics of cryptography, like public and private key stuff, and so on. So there's a lot of lot of things.
And then you try to pull on that sweater, that thread. You try to
Yeah.
pull it and see if everything falls apart. When do you know that you have something, that something's there? Like I'm sure, because you've done this before. You uncovered vulnerabilities, and I'm sure that's super exciting because it's almost like being a detective, right? You like sit there in a stakeout for so many hours and nothing happens, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden, like the bad guys are coming in. Like, but it's almost the same, similar for you. Like you might poke a piece of software many times and nothing happens, and all of a sudden you do the right thing and everything falls apart.
Yeah. So I measured one way to, or one like method for researching is that I was like just making observations what happens. But the second thing is that I every now and then I got a theme that I try to study like certain kind of things. So for instance, I think it was 2 years ago, I decided to study all the migration methods there were related to Microsoft services. And that was before I joined Microsoft. So I looked for email. I didn't find anything there. Then I looked for SharePoint, which is also like a background service for Teams and OneDrive. And I actually found out that there was a migration API that was meant for well, as the name suggests, migrate stuff to the cloud. And I noticed that all the file like dates and creators and everything like that metadata was also transferred to cloud. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. So I was able to replicate the protocol, and I noticed that I can create documents as any user if I have a certain level of admin rights. And in Teams, if you create team, you have those permissions. So basically, if I had a team, I could like create documents as any person in my tenant. And also I was like able to replace existing files without any log events. So that was like, okay, now I find something interesting. And actually I had a talk about that in 2023 in DEF CON during the Hackers Summer Camp.
And Dr. Syynimaa, why is that important? Why? Because to me, for in layman terms, I think, okay, well, you can replace a file and create a file. What does it matter? But it does matter, right? I mean, there's a certain aspects of maliciousness that's in the word.
Yeah.
Right?
So, for instance, if I let's say my boss says that, hey, Nestori, why don't you put up a team where we are storing our policies? And I say, okay. And then I create a document as my boss, which says, okay, I can always travel in first class, and it's created by my boss. He can't deny that because there's no log event whatsoever. So he can't say that I didn't do that.
You know,
because the log
it
doesn't.
worries me, the story,
Yeah.
the ease of which you came out with this example.
Yeah.
Where
Because I've used the same example earlier.
I'm joking. And so once there's an exploit, and once a software or portal or whatever misbehaves or behaves in an unexpected way, you'd be almost certain that someone was going to use that in a nefarious way. Is that a correct statement? Is that somebody out there would say, okay, I know this is possible, I'm going to exploit this.
Yes, probably they will. They will, yeah.
With some consequences.
Yeah, there is, but it is kind of like so. Before I joined Microsoft, so I was like outside researcher. So when you're outside, the process is usually this: that you report something, and you report that to Microsoft Security Response Center or MSRC, and they will like review the case. They talk with engineering, and then they will end up to a conclusion that is it a vulnerability or not. So that's the first one. And for instance, this particular thing, it wasn't. So it wasn't like seen as a vulnerability. So then it means for researchers that they can publish that. And sometimes it happens that still happens that if somebody publishes something that was like categorized for some reason, like by design or not vulnerability, then it will get an attention, and then it might come a problem later on. So then it will be fixed later. But anyways, that's always the same with researching. So if vendor doesn't agree with you, it says we're not going to fix this, and then you are free to publish that. They might change their mind after it comes an issue. But now it's a bit different for me because I work inside Microsoft. So which means that if I find some vulnerability, I can see the metadata, telemetry, that is somebody exploiting this already. Because if I can find something and someone else might have already found that already. So I can see that. So does it happen? And then we can like build detections for that, even though that it wouldn't be fixed. Maybe because it's not a big issue, or maybe nobody's using that particular feature or something. But anyways, we can build a detection beforehand. So if we or somebody else finds that later on, we can like detect that. So we have the capability. So it's a bit different like now when I'm working inside. So I could say that now I can. Sorry?
You have the insider view. You have the ability to look under the hood.
Yeah, and I can kind of like have a better impact now inside because I can get the data that backs up my view. So, okay, I think this is a bad thing. Maybe we should fix that because people are exploiting already this.
And how do people know that you're successful? Meaning, there's and I hate to use that term, KPI, key performance indicators. When you sit with your boss or your supervisor at the end of the year or the quarterly and they say, Nestori, like, you are doing great. What does great mean for a security researcher?
That's a very good question, because kind of like if I don't find anything, does it mean that I'm a bad researcher, or are we getting better at making like more secure products? So you really don't know. But we are pushing so many features out to the market, so there's always something to find for me. So I'm probably going to find things also in the future. But well, you can't kind of build KPIs for researchers as such, because what could that be? So I used to like teach also like ITIL and like that kind of methodology, and one example there was that you always get what you measure. So there was a software company that they were a bit worried because their software quality was so bad that customers were angry, and they was thinking, okay, what should we do? and somebody said, hey, maybe we should pay a bonus for finding a bug. And they did. So what happened? People found more bugs than ever, but customers were still angry because, software developers, they want to get more money, so they just created bugs so that they could find those instead of like implementing the features the customers wanted. So that's a very hard thing to like measure. But for me, like a part of my job is to be the public speaker. So how many talks you had? 1, that's not good. 10, that's better. 20, you did very good. So that's quite easy to measure. And yeah, but the research part as such, it's not that easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like you're fighting against the current, as you mentioned, because software all things considered, should become more secure over time.
Yes.
So it's so the job in theory should be more and more difficult over time. But as you described, there's a lot of new features, new updates, and so on. And I'm assuming again that there's I know that the fact that Microsoft moved to the cloud, the Office 365, the migration, all that pieces, they had to really revamp some of the architecture because what was good for on-prem was not necessarily great in cloud. And I know they do that they had to do some stuff for Active Directory and so on and so on. But there seems to be always new features, innovation. And what's the OS level like? How many lines of codes is Windows 11 or SharePoint or Exchange, Office 365? I can't even imagine how many lines of codes. There's always
I have no idea, but I would assume that millions of rows.
Millions.
Yeah, if not more.
Yeah, if not more. And now with AI in the mix, right now we got to bring this back as well to the discussion. It seems like there's always discussion about poisoning AI engines, and I know that Microsoft is pushing for in the cyberspace for Copilot, and so there's a push for that. What's your take on the vulnerabilities in some of the AI models? If you have an opinion of how, because again, I think some of the things you're doing is similar in nature. You have input that you expect and output, and the input can be the creation of the model or the modification of the model, and the output and you expect something because you train the model a certain way and you expect an output a certain way. But as you know, especially from all people as a researcher, that's not typically the case. Not always the case.
Yeah. So I don't know much about security of the models as such, but to me, AI appears to be like a bit like a child who has very much brain power, if you will. And now that people are starting to use things, there was an excellent talk in Black Hat about hacking Copilot. So there was this group, I can't remember the group name, but anyways, they were studying like Fortune 500 organizations and how many like Copilots they had. And I think that was called Copilot Studio, where you could build your own like a bot backed by AI.
Look at the agent. I think that they call these agents. Like there's a lot of these agents where you build your own agent to solve a certain problem based on Copilot or based on something else.
Yeah. So they used an example that there was an HR guy who created an agent, if you will, that allowed you to ask your salary. Okay, so what's my salary? So just send email or just ask from the bot, and then the bot answered. Now, there was a couple of things here. So the bot is running with the permissions of its creator. So the bot has had access to all the same information that person.
God power, like admin God power.
No, not admin, but just like normal HR person.
Oh, okay.
So you had access to all salary information of all people, for instance. And now about the childish mind, what I said, I meant that people were able to pursue the agent to get salary information of others also, just by, making a correct prompt. So there's these kind of like business logic errors that you can build like unpurposely in your agent, and you shouldn't trust that much to, what the agent does, because it's just an AI-based thing, and they can be lied on or try to do making something else. And then there was a kind of a technical thing that at least in the beginning you could create bots or agents that were, by default, they were open to internet. So anybody could access that agent and ask anybody's basically salary if they're able to find that. So that kind of technical things there also. But I would say that's same with all the new technologies, because everybody's now doing the AI and try to, be ahead of the market or competition. So they are, trying to use or find the use cases for those. But because we are in the very beginning, there are some default settings or something that we don't know how to implement correctly yet.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And so what's interesting about all these vulnerabilities in software is that there's quite a thriving ecosystem of vendors that they see some issues, maybe not necessarily just the vulnerabilities, but maybe the management of a certain tool. So for example, Active Directory or whatever else. And then the vendor takes out and create almost like another layer on top of it. And there's quite a few there. There's ones for Active Directory, there's ones for firewalls, endpoint, you name it. What's your take on that? Is that, why don't the vendor itself, like a Microsoft, will take all the modification that vendor that provide augmentation and just provides it in the software itself? Why do you have to, you're already using Microsoft, why do you have to use a third party to almost protect Microsoft solutions from misbehaving? What's your take on that?
Well, I'm not familiar with that so that I could, give a comment on that. But in general, I would imagine that people want to have like security product, for instance, from different vendors, like 2 or 3 different firewalls, linked to protect from different things. So maybe that's the reason. I'm not sure about.
Yeah. And then as a CIO, you were a CIO handling very large infrastructure. So it's really interesting because you were facing a lot of business issues as a CIO. So you had to run a reliable infrastructure with demanding users that expect nothing else but 100% uptime. And they don't care about anything else. Like they don't necessarily care about security. They don't care about how things operate. What was your major mindset of running like these large infrastructure? What was your main concern, aside from it getting to work, from a cyber perspective, since you got into the space and started looking at vulnerabilities and so on? Having that kind of responsibility is stressful, I think, right? As
so
a large infrastructure.
So just to open that a little bit, so I was CIO of 8 cities surrounding my hometown where I live now, but we had a shared infrastructure with my hometown where I live now. So in total 9 cities, they were having the shared infrastructure, like
How many
networks.
Do you remember approximately?
25,000 or something like that.
Significant.
Yeah. So we had a very much, let's say, power, to put people to, keep that core infrastructure up and running and safe. So the small cities only had to focus on their own information management or information systems. And what was the most difficult to me was that because there were 8 different cities, and everybody had like same problem, same functions. Every like single city or municipality in Finland, they have the 33 like mandatory services that they have to provide according to law, and then they can also have like voluntary ones. But those basic things are same for everybody, like child education and that kind of things. So they didn't see outside their own like city or municipality. So I want to buy this one, and they bought that. And the
You
second
can't
one
blame
was
them though, Nestori. It's almost like they all operate in their own little bubble, like in their own little,
yeah. And usually
silo.
when you purchase something, you are locked to that like 5 years or something. And okay, one city starts both something now, and the second one there would be like a contract would end after 1 year. I was like, why don't you wait 1 year and you can buy the same one? No, we can't wait or anything like that. So that was like a biggest issue. So we had a limited resources, and they were doing like a little bit like wrong things. But from safety point of view, I just had to make sure that they tell me about that as soon as possible, so that we can like review the security. And the worst cases was that, okay, we bought this and we want to integrate it to Entra ID, and they need to have global admin permissions. And I said, what? That's not going to happen. So yeah.
It sounds like almost like operational problems, not so much
Yes.
security problems. It's really much the mindset. It's almost like reining everybody in under one run roof, and because they're so disjointed and each one care about their own. And I think you see that a lot in municipalities as well. And not even look at even enterprise, right? It's almost the same. Large enterprise, you have all these departments, and they go out. Maybe I don't know if they still do today, but they go out and buy solutions on their own. They have their
Yeah.
own IT departments. They implement them, and then they don't care if in fact they might not even know that they already have a license somewhere else in the organization, and they can utilize that. They'll just go out and buy it and implement it, and then they request access sometimes, as you mentioned, to a larger database and cause some issues. And so it's a lot of that. And then essentially as an executive, you have to be nice. I'm assuming there's a lot of politics involved. So you can't
Yeah.
really like just be like a really strong hand and say, well, you can't use it. There's a lot of nuances that are involved. And so how do you manage to at least make people, and that's what they say, it's about IT. It's all about getting the buy-in from the other groups. It's almost like being able to be able to convince other groups that we're in this together. And it's a soft skills that has nothing to do with IT, almost nothing, or nothing to do
Yeah.
with, it's all soft skills associated with that.
Yeah, and it was like interesting that IT people from all the cities, they were like, yeah, we want to do this like together. But it was more like a local, like a substance owners or I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but anyways,
The
so they
subject
were,
owners. Yep. The
so
business owners.
so they were like, they just saw their own thing.
Um,
But yeah, there was a couple of things like uh, like uh, like marketing, for instance. So every like city has their websites and so on. So a couple of cities, I think there were 3 or 4, they purchased one platform so that they could share that. But that came because we were kind of able to bring those people together. Hey, talk about this, and they were like, okay, let's make this together.
mhm. And then the
So
promise.
you can push that.
Yeah, for sure. And the promise of becoming more digitized and efficiencies. They talk about a lot about securing entities now, not just identities like individuals, but now machines, IoT devices. What's your philosophy on getting all that mix into under control in the organization that's so disjointed, like just like yours was, because they all want to invest in most shiny new device that can potentially save money and maybe become more green as an organization. There's just so much promise, but then they plug it into the network. It might be an IT device, and then all hell breaks loose because there's some default username and password on it.
Yeah, but that was easy because the IT or my organization was only organization that could provide devices, and you could only use devices provided by us. So even if you plugged in your own laptop, it didn't work. You didn't get any connection.
Oh, so you have it completely locked down.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also if they bought a piece of software, so we had a firewalls around the the sandbox, and we said put it there. So even though there could be a bug or somebody could compromise that, they couldn't get out of there. So we try to minimize risk that way.
So switching gears a bit, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about the research community. We know the adversaries, the people that are looking for these exploits, they collaborate. There's forums, there's user groups, telegrams, whatever the case may be. In fact, you can probably go and buy some 0 days or buy some exploits in the open market.
Yes, you can.
How much of that is done on your side? Meaning, like, how much do you collaborate on a day-to-day basis with others to try to figure things out, maybe share ideas? Is that something that you do normally, or is it something that typically doesn't happen?
It happens. So there are no formal thing, but for instance, me and others who are traveling around the world and speaking conferences, so we have become like friends. So we share things, and also there's like a informal group currently run by us, and there are a couple of researchers doing the same kind of things that I do. So we are like sharing our expertise and so on. So we do that, yes.
Is there a like a pride thing where you're not, if you found something really good, you're not going to share until you announce it? Or is there like almost like a competition between researchers?
Yeah, well, obviously I can't share my findings nowadays in the same way, but when I didn't work for Microsoft, we could share like something, especially, of course, if you are meeting, there's not always like everybody are able to attend. So if there was only like Microsoft people, I could like tell them. But if there are others, just maybe some hints and so on, so what it might be. But usually we don't share the details. But when it's public, after somebody has published that, then we can talk about that like in details.
And there's a bunch of bounty programs.
Yes.
That you can make actually significant amount of money. I don't know how much Apple is paying for like 0 days. I don't know if Microsoft does the same.
Yeah, there's different like bounty programs and like different categories. So my biggest bounty is like the single bounty has been $20,000, and in total I think I earned like $100,000 in bounties
That's amazing. Well, that's
2 or
before
3
tax.
years. Sorry?
That's before tax. Those are like, you still have to pay taxes on top of that.
Yeah. But
still,
yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
yeah.
But there's some bounties that are like millions of dollars apparently, depending on the exploit, depending on what type of
Yeah, and it depends on the program. So Microsoft program, for instance, so if you go to msrc.microsoft.com, I hope that's the correct URL. But anyways, there you can go and see the bounties. And I think the highest one currently, well, last time I checked, it was like $500,000 for Hyper-V kind of things. Because Azure runs on Hyper-V, so it's very important that there are no bugs there or vulnerabilities. So
yeah, and so is it worth it to maybe say that's a significant amount of money, right? So maybe someone will say, hey, I can treat it like a job. I'm going to take a year off from work and basically saying all I do all day long is like get up in the morning and trying to hack and trying to exploit and trying to find, and then sell it back to Microsoft. Is that something someone can do, or do you think
Yes,
that the
there
odds of
are.
them finding is?
Yes, there are. So, for instance, the MVR list we were talking about earlier. So, what did I have last time? I was on
Because that's the ultimate.
nine,
In a story,
90
that's the ultimate.
something.
That's the ultimate work from home.
Yeah.
You
So,
can be anywhere, and you can be on the beach in Thailand and trying to hack somebody's boss.
and there are people who are doing that. But anyways, last time I was on that list, I think I had like 200 or something points, and I was in 90 or 70 or 80 or something like that. But the first one had like 5,000 points or something. So he or she, I don't know. But anyways, the first person is it's doing only that for a living, because there's no way you can get that amount of like points and also like bounties if you are not doing that full time.
And do you think they're also using leveraging tools like maybe some homegrown things that they
Probably.
developed, or AI tools, or combination their agents? Because that's, again, it's significant. You can honestly, you can make a pretty decent living if you're successful at it. And not even that. After you do that, you can work as a consultant anywhere, because
Yeah.
you could say, "Hey, I'm the one who discovered these exploits. I was the top number one these 5 years. You should hire me as a security consultant to protect your business or protect your code."
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point that if you are on that list uh, and you are working in countries like where the income is not that well, first of all, you can get bounties, but you can also prove to your employers that, hey, look at this. I know this stuff. I'm on the list of 100 top security researchers according to Microsoft. So
Yeah, it's
you will
amazing.
get, so you can get hired much easily.
Yeah, and it's almost just as good, if not better, than having a GitHub account with all the stuff that you've done.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's like the hacker version of GitHub, is being on the list of
yeah.
of the top 100. In that list, so does the top 100, did they ever get together? Is it like the top 100 conference where people get together, or is it
Well, during the
beyond
Black
that?
Hat, there's
Mhm.
a research celebration party, and all the MVRs are invited. There are also other researchers and Microsoft employees and partners. So yeah, there's a nice party, nice
It's almost,
party during the Black
it
Hat.
reminds me of the chess ranking. Like how you have like the people are like enamored by what's your ranking, and as a chess player, you have the
Hmm.
number one in the world, and then you can go up or down depending on, because there's a list, right? And they tell you what ranking, and in order for you to go up the ranks, you have to beat somebody. In this particular case, there's ranking, but you're not beating, you're not competing against for someone else, but you're trying to find exploit and trying to uncover more and more vulnerabilities. So, and is there a list for Microsoft and all the large vendors, or is it strictly, or is it like one list that for everybody, like for
No,
all
this is
the?
just for Microsoft internal list. And there are also like general bug bounty platforms like HackerOne or Bugcrowd, or can't remember the third one. But there you can find like a ranking list who are doing bug bounties through that. So you can also do bug bounties for Microsoft through that platform, and then like others. So usually they are like organizations who have their own bug bounty programs, but they are running that on that platform like HackerOne, and everybody can attend. And some bug bounty like programs are closed, so it's invitation only. So if you are doing good on those ranking lists, you will get invited to do something special every now and then.
It's such a fascinating world. It's and you have to be in it to know it. Uh, and it's amazing. I appreciate you providing the insight into that. So last question. If somebody listens to this and say, listen, this is so cool, I would love to do this, right? I would love to be a hacker full time, essentially, be a white hat, but like just looking to solve some of these problems. And it's amazing because you can make money, but you're giving back. You're actually, when every time you make money, you're actually making the world safer for all of
Mhm.
us to use these software. how do you get started? What's the, if I'm watching this and I'm just going to have a bit of knowledge, some programming knowledge, I have a lot of curiosity, a lot of time on my hand. How do I get started?
Yeah, the easiest would be if there's some area you are interested in and you like very enthusiastic to do that. So that would help. Like for me, it was the cloud thing. And whenever you found your area, well, easiest way is to, go and see blog posts or write-ups. So for instance, when I did find a bug, I post a very detailed write-up. So what did I do? Which tools I used? How I noticed that? And this and that. So there, it's like step by step. So kind of like a thought process. So I learned a lot of other people, by reading their write-ups. And
And
then
it's
there
amazing,
are,
by the way, you not to cut you off in the story, that it's basically reminds me when I was in high school, is show your work.
Mhm.
It's not enough to show the end result. Like it's amazing that because that's an effort. To do these write-ups, you have to, it takes some time. So you got to
yeah, it could
go through
take
the whole,
2 or 3 days, and
yeah,
you
yeah.
need to remember, document everything.
So you're
So,
showing
but
your work of
yeah,
exactly how from the beginning to end, right? And then so people can replicate. Is that the reason why you're doing this? People can replicate what you've done?
yes, and also like to teach that how to detect your own things,
Mhm.
and what tools I use and how I was able to, get to that point. Because that's easy way to learn, because now you know, okay, that guy found that bug or vulnerability by doing using those tools and so on.
So you mentioned this is one way to start, right? By viewing some of
Yes,
these write-ups.
yeah, and then try to replicate using the same tools and so on. And the second thing is that there's a lot of organization, I think Hack the Box is one of them. So you can go and buy like labs or challenges. And there are walkthroughs to those also if you get stuck. But anyways, by doing those, you can learn that how to attack for instance, Windows computer, Linux computer, or certain service, AWS or Azure, through some misconfiguration and so on. So that's also one way to do that if you want to do it by yourself. And they are also like taught courses. So they took like 1 or 2 weeks online courses. They teach you to hack, and then you can replicate that in a laboratory and so on. So there are a lot of ways to do that.
And I think what's driving is that I'm sure that you get a bit of a rush once you find a break into something. There's almost like this rush of
Adrenaline and
yeah, it's just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like any other type of, and that's what I mentioned, is it's almost like a stakeout for, like, you're sitting there trying to, and then something happens and then the spike. So once you find something, I'm assuming the next day it was like, okay, now what? There's like this like fall that, like, how do you then get up again and do this again?
Well, it keeps giving, if you will. So when you find that it's a very good feeling, and then you report that, and you're able to replicate that, maybe to see what else you can do after you got in or you found something. But usually you should stop there. So just when you got there, just stop. So don't destroy anything, because that's you might lose your bounty and maybe even get sued. And that's actually a
Yeah.
very, very important thing, that you shouldn't hack anything without permissions. And if you do the bug bounties, they are usually, I think it's called safe harbor. So for instance, Microsoft lets you to hack like our cloud environment as long as you keep boundaries. For instance, if you find something bug that lets you in, stop there.
Oh,
So
so you don't continue pulling on that thread without their permission.
yeah, correct.
So you don't want
But
to
if you
unravel
do,
that
then you
thread.
are not covered with that safe harbor anymore, and you might get sued and you need to pay. Let's say if you crash the whole Azure, that would be very, very expensive. But anyways, uh, okay, you found the bug, you report that, and then if the vendor agrees with you that it's a vulnerability, yes, that's a second good feeling. And then third might be when they pay you bounty. And the fourth one, when you are able to publish that. And in the best case, your target accepted the Black Hat or DEFCON, and that's also like a very nice adrenaline kick to speak to many thousand peoples on the main stage. So they are different like
And so there's a few that don't go through that route, but use that, and they basically to exploit and make money on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes can be more lucrative. And I remember like seeing a software engineer that turned to a hacker, said, well, like, listen, he was in Eastern Europe somewhere, I can make $200 a month, or I can make, $200,000 in a day, doing some of them like, and it's a tough, for some people, it's a very tough struggle to do the right thing, go through the process, because it's be rewarding, but almost like some people say, well, there's a quicker path to reward on the other side.
Yeah, but it's all about ethics. So if you find vulnerability, well, you can compare that to guns, for instance. So if you walk out there and you find a gun, you usually deliver it to police, right? But if you're a bad guy, you can just take it and start shooting people. So yeah, so there's a difference,
Good example.
and that is correct. That if you want to make quick or big money, people are selling their vulnerabilities on the black market, because you can do that many times. Because if you report, for instance, us something you found, you can only get paid once, and it's going to be fixed. But on the black market, you can sell them, and that is the problem. And we just need to kind of like believe that they are good people, white hat hackers. And also that's why I do my job. So I try to find things which probably bad guys have already also found. So
Yeah, you
I'm
have to find
doing
it first, or at
well
least,
as fast as possible. Yeah.
and then so that makes you wonder if they're paying enough. Yeah, meaning that if the bounties are large enough, that because there's always this like balance. You can get paid 10x and then be risk at putting life in jail without parole, or you can get enough and sleep well at night. But I guess if the delta is too high, that's why I think
Yeah.
people are moving and picking the wrong or the right choice, if you wish. So maybe they
Yeah.
have to increase those.
Yeah. And the most like known researchers, they are working for companies. They are publishing their fundings as their companies. And the companies are usually security companies. So they also want to make things safer. And they don't care about the bounty amount that much, but more like that whatever they found, that they, that vendors would like agree that that's a vulnerability and do something about that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Last question: is there a Nobel Prize version of for researchers in your area where when people do in the scientific version, they get a Nobel Prize for doing a complete breakout in certain topics? Is there a version of that for us, for you?
um, I don't think so, but of course there's like a cybersecurity people of the year and that kind of awards, I suppose. But I don't think there's Nobel Prize.
We should vote for that. We should vote to have an official. We'll call it something else. Nobel, instead of Nobel Prize, will be something else, because I think there should be. Listen, you're just as contributing to the overall well-being of everybody. We all touch software on a regular basis, whether it's Microsoft or not. And so your job has a direct impact to everyday's life for everybody. So for the security of everyone, and it's a lot of times it's a matter of national security or not, but it's always, so there should be, for people that are contributing so much to the space, there should be a recognition associated with it as well.
Yeah, and the best researchers, I mean, those who found the most vulnerabilities, they are the quiet ones. They don't usually even go to conferences and talk about that. So I'm just one of those who are talking in conferences because I like that. But those who are doing the biggest job or the greatest impact, they are, just sitting back home and drinking coffee
Is,
or Coke and
the
eating
story is
pizza.
that
And
is that because of who they are, or is that because out of necessity? Because they can be very valuable to certain individuals. So I would say like it'd be almost risky to if you have the kind of skill set, there's somebody out there that maybe will want to exploit you to hack into a new system or whatever the case may be. It can be very valuable.
well, we can only guess, but I suppose that it's more like a personal thing that,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
So it's just like the like what you would imagine. Somebody sits in their parents' basement with a playing video games all day, and every once in a while just venturing into the because that's what we see in the movies, right? Like the
yeah.
hacker, how they like eat Cheetos and play video games all day, and then somehow they manage to hack into the biggest systems out there. But maybe not. Maybe it's like people like yourself with PhDs.
Yeah, could be.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much. So what's the easiest way for people to reach out to you to know more about what you do, just in general to get in touch?
Uh, Twitter or X or whatever it's called nowadays. Dr. Azurate is my handle. Also in other social media platforms, which I don't use that much, but anyways, I think that's the easiest one. Or LinkedIn. So
Fantastic.
it's easy because I was one of the first users in LinkedIn in Finland. So the address is linkedin.com/in/Nestori. So it's my first name.
Fantastic. You're the first one that it's amazing. I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you very much for giving us a glimpse behind the scene of a vulnerability researcher. It's truly amazing. Again, I think this conversation was super valuable to a lot of folks.
Yeah, well,
Until
thanks for
then,
having me. This was great fun.
yeah, it's supposed to be fun, and I apologize for for misplacing you in Sweden, and I'm never going to do this again. So I
No,
appreciate you
no,
being
that's all
easy
right.
on me. Finland, it is. Nestori, thank you very much, Dr. Nestori. Thank you very much for attending
Thanks,
this,
David.
and looking forward to maybe doing this again sometime soon. Maybe we'll find a new. Hopefully, you find some new vulnerability, and we'll be able to discuss this in the next episode. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good stuff. 99% upload. That was fun. That was fun.
Yeah, it
It was
was.
fun.
And time
Sorry.
fly. I didn't even notice that how much time it is.
Yeah, and I could have kept going because I had so many questions every time you say something. And we should vote for Nobel Prize you should make our own for Nobel Prize for researchers. I'm telling you, that's because you do the exact same thing. Like what's the opposite? Instead of uncovering new stuff, you uncover new stuff in vulnerability. So,
Yeah.
which makes the world a better place, So, or a more secure place, if you wish. So when
Yeah,
is your
and
next
one of
book?
the
Go on.
funniest bug bounty story was that I found something in Entra ID. At that time, it was Azure AD, and I reported that, and it took almost like 2 years before Microsoft said, "Okay, yes, this is an issue," and they fixed that
Wow.
by introducing a new setting, uh, and and then they said that it got fixed, and I said them that, but you can change the setting back without like a special permission. So they were like, "Oh dear." So here's another bounty. So I got 2 times 20,000
Wow. So
for
they
one bounty.
one way in the back.
Yeah,
That's cool. That's Microsoft for you, right? It's like, listen, it's a drop in the bucket.
yeah. I'm sure about that. Yeah, it's been 99%. Is it still recording? So maybe that's the reason. But I can see I can see a rec button here. Should I press it? Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.